Right, I'll get started. So, first I'll tell you a bit about who I am in case you don't know anything about me yet. I'm Michelle. I'm a life coach, a certified life coach, and I specialize in helping beautiful, sensitive souls overcome struggles and overcome their toxic environments to fulfill their potential and find their wings, find their purpose and independence. So, I am a highly sensitive person myself, as you can probably tell from my energy and soft voice. I have been through many struggles as well, and so that's what's led me to this place to help all of you. So, I'll tell you a bit about my story first. I came from a place of not knowing really very much at all about my trait. I found out that I was highly sensitive when I was in my late 20s. I'm in my mid-30s now. And I went from one environment to another that was just not very complimenting to who I was. I always felt like I had to change a part of who I was to be able to fit into the environments I was in. My voice was always the quiet one. I held back. I felt quite shy and embarrassed of who I was because I felt that I was quite different to everyone else. And I wasn't exactly surrounded by people who were supportive of my differences. So when I finally created this environment for myself, where I understood myself and found the right kind of support, people who could relate to me, that's when things started to change and I started valuing who I am. So the topic I'll be covering today is to do with why are empaths or highly sensitive people so attracted to narcissistic behavior. And I'm sure that many of you will probably have come across those types of people before. And the key thing with that is we're basically like magnets, right? Where there's this magnetic connection between empaths and narcissists. And the reason is that empaths are so inclined to give. We love to give, and to the point where we overgive. And often we end up so detached from what our needs are because we're so obsessed with giving, right? Then you've got the narcissist at the opposite end of the scale. So we're the highly empathetic ones, and then they're the least empathetic people out there that there are, right? So, my sister just joined. Hi, Nicole. So why do we attract? So we've got the empaths who are at the most sensitive part of the scale, and then the narcissists that are at the opposite end, right? So we're so obsessed with giving to the point where we overgive, and they're obsessed with taking. So it's the ideal combination, right? One's obsessed with giving, one with taking. It's just like two magnets attracting each other. The other thing is that, as you're probably aware within yourself, we're very forgiving people. So we often see the good in people to the point where we become kind of blinded to what's being done to us, to the toxicity of what's happening towards us. So we don't see the bad behavior as much. We don't see what's being done to us as much as we do the good that there might be in those individuals, which can be questionable really because of the manipulation that takes place. So what allows us to get sucked into this spiral? First of all, a lot of us don't really notice what's going on. Narcissists are very clever people. They They know how to charm people and get them on your side. And they're very good at sucking you in and throwing you back out, and sucking you in and throwing you back away. And it's a constant cycle of that. And why is that? So first, the love bombing. Love bombing, if you're not familiar with that term, is when they say everything that you want to hear. They say, oh, you're amazing. You're so great. All these great things about you. And then they throw you back away by throwing, their angry rages at you. How do you know that we are an empath? Good question. So empaths are very intuitive people. So there's the empaths and highly sensitive trait, which are very similar things, but for the sake of simplicity, empaths do tend to be highly sensitive people. So when you're a highly sensitive person, you feel a lot more than the average person. So the highly sensitive people take up 10 to 15% of the population. So, which is why we don't easily feel like we fit into society, right? We have a very, very highly tuned nervous system. So our nervous system is a lot more fragile. So this is with respect to the physical elements, so to do with our physical senses. So our senses such as noise or smells or touch. So we're very sensitive to these things, and light, right? So for some of you, you might be more sensitive to some of these things compared to others. In my case, the worst things are light and noise. Yes, you feel other people's energy more, so we connect to people more, which is the beautiful positive side of it. So we are more prone to connecting to other people, and we feel other people's energy, which sometimes can be draining as well. So if we feel negative energies coming from people, it can feel very draining. And then you've got the energy vampires, who are the nice narcissistic, self-centered people, right? So they're the energy vampires because they suck all your energy and they drain you. So those are the people who tend to be very manipulative, and take you on this roller coaster of emotions. So just going back to what I was saying a moment ago, why do we get sucked into that spiral? So you've got the love bombing, so you're being told everything that you want to hear, and then they throw you back away with their rages, and then start manipulating you, so otherwise known as gaslighting. So with gaslighting, you're told things like, you're too sensitive, you're overreacting. So whether it's for example, to their rages, right? They're projecting something at you, and then if you express or communicate your feelings in response, if you communicate your feelings in response, you'll often be gaslighted. So in other words, manipulated and told that you're too much of something. So whenever you're told that you're too much of anything, or that you should be a certain way, that's gaslighting. Because at the end of the day, no one has the right to tell you what you should or should not do, and no one has the right to tell you you're too much of anything. Healthy communication is balanced. It's bringing out the good in the other person and helping each other in a healthy and balanced way. Right? So the other thing that they're very good at doing is victimizing themselves. So when they victimize themselves, of course, as empaths or highly sensitive people, we feel sorry for them because we don't like seeing people hurt. Right? It pains us to see people hurt, and there's nothing that we hate more than seeing someone hurt. So we end up putting our energy into, how can I help this person? And that's when we go into rescuing mode. And there's a fine line here with codependency. Now, if you're not familiar with codependency, that's quite typical for some of us who enter these kind of spirals, and especially those of us who have grown up in this type of environment where a parent or a sibling or whatever it might be had a similar type of behavior. So as a codependent, you end up kind of losing your sense of identity because all the voices around you are louder than your own, and you're just busy trying to fill the needs of other people and neglecting your own. So, why do these patterns repeat themselves? So if you've grown up in an environment like the one I'm just describing here, that's what's familiar to you. That's how you perceive love. That's how you perceive normality. To the point where anything that is not within this range of, not within this kind of area of roller coaster of emotions, ends up feeling boring or just not exciting enough. So stability ends up feeling unexciting. So I'll get on to giving you some tips in a minute, but just while I'm on this point, when it comes to if you begin to recognize if you are trying to get to know someone and it's not feeling exciting, but there is a degree of balance of respect, give it time, because if it's not what you're used to, you need to give it time to get to know the person the way you would a friend. So I'm talking about whether it's, if it's a romantic relationship that you're getting into, or even if it's a friendship or whatever it might be, give it time and get to know people. Because if you're not used to that sort of stability, then you won't naturally want to stay in it for very long. Yeah, I can see someone saying that's totally happening right now. It's so important. Let's talk about romantic relationships for a second. If you're not used to being around, being in a relationship where you're not being love bombed and gaslit and all these things, where you're not taken on this emotional roller coaster constantly, it's like an addiction. You've got the high highs and the low lows. It's like an addiction. So breaking free from an addiction does not necessarily feel right, isn't it? It feels a little bit strange and uncomfortable and unfamiliar. But the only way to break free from these things is to step into the unfamiliar and explore that. Because that's the only way of adapting yourself to new healthy environments that you're not used to. All right, so what else can we do about it? So that's one thing. Give it time when it comes to entering new relationships, and understand and be aware of what's happening. If someone's having rages or kind of flips like a light switch, don't ignore red flags. We're very good at ignoring red flags. I think this applies to everyone. We're very good at ignoring our intuition. Even though our intuition is so strong, we're very good at ignoring it. So it's so important to not allow what's going on in our mind and what our mind is being manipulated to believe, to win this battle between the mind and our intuition. So tapping into that is so important, and giving it our trust. Because more often than not, our mind will not be able to explain what our intuition is telling us. Or more often than not, it will only be able to explain it after you've removed yourself from the situation and are able to give yourself a sense of external perspective over your experience. So stepping outside of the situation and looking at it from a distance afterwards. Right? Yes, exactly. We're so conditioned to hearing external voices and trusting them over our own. So believing that we matter, right? And our inner voice matters, and it's super important too. Our other people's lives do not override our own. We are just as important. And we need to look after ourselves, because at the end of the day, especially if you come from a background or a family where others, if there was a narcissist and they prioritize themselves, the only person you've got left is yourself. So prioritizing yourself. So what else can we do about it? Connect to your own needs, because we become so out of touch with our own needs when we've been through this spiral of manipulation, when we've been through this experience of other people telling us that they matter more than us and that we are being selfish. All this is gaslighting. You're being selfish, you're overthinking, you're too sensitive. All this is gaslighting. It's all manipulation. So they're very good at fooling us, right? And that's why it's so important to be aware of this, because at the end of the day, we're not going to change them. We can't change them. There's not much we can do, right, to change anything that's outside of ourselves. And we can only try and live in frustration, and that will end up making us just depressed and anxious, right? So trying to control what's out of our control, and that includes other people and their behavior, is just not the way to go. If you want to help people that want to be helped. Help people who are asking for your help, and don't impose your help. And that's one thing that a lot of clients I've worked with have said to me. I want to help them. I can sense what's going on in their lives, and I want to help them. But wait for people to come to you, because imposing help, first of all, if they don't really know you, you end up coming across as a bit strange and aggressive, right? If someone you don't know comes up to you and is getting into your head, says, I know what you're feeling or thinking, it can come across as a bit strange. So warm up to people first, get to know them, and show them that you're willing to listen to them. Build that relationship and trust, because other people will naturally open up to you if you build that trust. Don't impose yourself. At the end of the day, we're no better or worse than anyone else. So, hi Christiane, welcome. Right, we're no better or worse than anyone else. So bear that in mind, right? So connecting to our own needs, so giving that importance, because we need to prioritize that, especially when no one else is going to respect that. The other thing is, I'll go back for a moment to talking about codependence. When it comes to codependent attachment, that won't go away overnight, because your codependency tendencies were not created overnight, so they won't leave you overnight. And detaching yourself from codependency tendencies take a lot of work and a lot of awareness. And that's where it also becomes quite difficult to discover on your own. So what is codependency, for those of you who aren't too familiar with it? It's a loss of sense of self, a loss of sense of identity, because you're busy trying to rescue others and trying to focus on their needs. And what are you getting in return? You're getting an emotional high, an emotional fix, a boost in your self-esteem. Because it kind of feels good to rescue, to feel like you're helping someone, right? It kind of gives you that little boost in your self-esteem. That's what a codependent feels. A non-codependent gives from a place of not really feeling the need to receive that emotional fix in return, or that self-esteem boost in return. It's kind of more of a selfless giving in the sense that you don't expect anything in return. I've personally been there too, by the way. So I used to be a codependent, and one if you are a codependent, one thing to remember is that it is not part of, well, it's a tendency. It's not part of who you are. So it's something that can be worked on and that you can detach from. So it won't go away overnight. So it takes time. It's like any addiction. It takes time to come off of. And ideally it takes someone like a coach to be able to bring out what's actually hidden under there. So what's behind the problem? So more often than not, if I get someone come to me and say, I'm struggling from this specific thing, about half an hour into the conversation, we end up in a totally different place. Because you might think that your key or root issue is one thing, but once that one thing is uncovered and the layers under the layer is uncovered, that's when you discover the truth of what's really going on. And that is very difficult to achieve on your own. So that's one thing for codependent attachment. The other thing that I recommend looking at is boundaries, and a lot of you probably have heard of boundaries and whether or not you struggle from them. I think most people, to be honest, struggle from setting boundaries. It's not easy, and the reason why it's not easy is because people will not be used to you doing it. Especially if you're used to overgiving, people won't be used to you not giving in to what they want. So boundaries, take time to yourself, to connect to yourself, and be able to tap into your intuition a little bit better and trust that intuition. Okay? So again, don't allow your manipulative mind affect your choices in terms of your actions, which should be more connected to your intuitive thinking than your kind of manipulated mind thinking. So if you're not sure which direction to take, and your mind is telling you something different to your intuition or your gut, more often than not your gut will be right, and allow your mind to follow later on, because you will get clarity later on. How long does healing take? It takes different lengths of time for different people, you know. Again, it doesn't happen overnight, so it's important to make it gradual. You can't become a non-codependent overnight, but you can start with small boundaries. You can start creating small boundaries with other people to claim time for yourself, and that's a good first step. Claim time for yourself. And if you get that aggressive response, then it's, know that it will pass. The more you do this, the more people will get used to it, and the more you'll find that that naturally the process will unveil itself, and you'll figure out what's right for you. So start with the little things, and don't look at it like a big mountain to climb. Just take each step at a time, and those tiny little steps are what are important. Okay? So the other thing I recommend, got an aggressive response, yeah. That's quite normal, but you need to keep setting the boundaries. And exposure to this type of environment is really difficult. And when I say set boundaries, I also mean, claim your space, and it's up to you at the end of the day if you want to remain in that environment or not, but at least acknowledge what you need to do for yourself. And it's keeping in mind what's important for you that matters here, right? And again, don't let your manipulated mind take over from your intuition. If it feels like you're doing the right thing for yourself and to fulfill your needs, then keep doing what you're doing. Okay, so the other thing I recommend here is, when it comes to your impulse, if you have an impulse for overgiving, ask yourself where that impulse is coming from. Are you giving from a place of wanting to receive an emotional high or emotional fix from it? Or are you giving from a place of pure giving without expecting anything in return? Right. So that's super important. But the most important thing is connect to your own needs. And the only way to do that is to spend time with yourself, quiet space for yourself, and detach yourself a little bit. Give yourself a retreat every so often. Every day we all need that self-care and recharge time. Okay? And then clarity comes from that. But again, these are things that are difficult to implement on your own as well, and even with all the information you can learn, with me giving you this type of information, or information that you can learn on YouTube or whatever social media platform it might be, it's tricky to notice what's going on in the layers underneath. And that's where it becomes really helpful for someone to help you uncover them, because that does vary for each individual. So the information I'm giving you here is kind of the typical scenarios. But in addition to all this, there's obviously more depth for each individual. Okay? So it's different for each individual. So you've got to bear that in mind. And sometimes it takes someone from an outside perspective who know about this and what's going on to help pull you out of it, and also offer you the support, because sometimes we can feel really alone in what we're going through. I mean, I know that I felt very alone in what I was going through. I didn't know anything about who I was, in the sense, well, in every sense really, but in the sense that I didn't really understand sensitivity. I didn't feel like it was okay to be sensitive. I obviously struggled with my sexuality as well, so I felt shame around that. So we end up feeling all this shame because we don't understand ourselves or who we are, and we don't have the support. And especially if we grow up in an environment where we're not supported for who we are and our trait and all of that, it becomes really difficult to build the tools on our own. And in the end, we just have to end up parenting ourselves. But first, asking for the right support to help you get to that point. And at the end of the day, you're not expected to be coached for your whole life. You expect to go through a program once or twice and then learn the tools to, well, ideally once, but for longer term change, sometimes it's helpful to keep going a little bit longer for consistency, just for the support. But you're not expected to keep needing it. You end up with the tools within yourself that you can carry forward in your life to know how to handle every situation moving forward. So I've got a question here, Anne, thank you for that. Do you think counseling helps after narcissistic abuse? So I'll just for a moment, now that you've mentioned counseling, I'll clarify this, because I get this question a lot. So with counseling, or with most forms of therapy, including counseling, you it's a solutionizing mindset, meaning you're looking into the past and you're trying to create a kind of understanding and solution for the past, the problem that is in your past, to understand it. When I have people come to me, and including my own experience actually from my background, I'll go to my kind of experience for a moment. I had counseling years ago. I had counseling for a few years. That kind of helps you gain an understanding of your past and what the cause of your current behavior is. So it helps you get from -10 to 0. It helps you understand your trauma. It helps you understand, you're looking to your childhood and understand what's happened there that has led you to where you are now. In coaching, it helps you, rather than get from -10 to 0, it helps you get from 0 to 10. So it's about looking at your current behavior now and acknowledging your past for, what it's led you to in terms of the now, but it helps you move forward. So it helps you identify where you want to be in your life, how you want to feel, what that inner state is that you want to feel, the confidence, the independence, everything that clear away everything that's holding you back and identify what's holding you back and moving that to the side and breaking through to get you to where you really want to be, to live a more positive life. Okay, so those are the key differences. So if you're in a place in your journey where you want to look at your past and understand the past, if you're not really clear on what's, where that behavior is coming from, then counseling is the thing for you. If you want to look at building your confidence and create a more independent sense of self and find your own identity and move forward in a positive way to maximize your potential in your life and find your purpose and be the happy person that you are meant to be moving forward, that's what coaching allows you to do. Okay? So I hope you found that helpful. I'll take any questions if you've got any now. Yeah, the other thing actually I want to mention is, so just going back for a second to coaching, what the process allows you to do. So like I was saying, it creates this unraveling of the layers that are going on. So you present a problem and with my observation, I end up uncovering what's really going on, uncovering those layers. What tends to happen in coaching, whether it's in the conversation itself, a lot of the time it is, and sometimes it's in between sessions when you reflect on what's been discussed, you get something called a perspective shift. So what a shift is that internal change. So this is where what I was saying before about information, how information online, this type of information, educational information can be helpful to help you gain some sort of awareness. But what people sometimes tell me is that I know all this, I know this information, but I can't seem to feel it and live it. And what you need to be able to live it is for something inside you, deep inside you internally, to shift. And what allows that shift to happen is when your perspective changes, and that's something that can only be achieved in a coaching conversation rather than being educated about it. So that's one of the main differences. And then it goes from creating that shift, which basically is a newfound awareness. So a perspective shift is a newfound awareness of your situation. So you've come into the session thinking, this is my problem, and then you end up with this brand new discovery of, oh my God, that's what my problem is, and that's what needs to be worked on. So then it's getting you from that newfound awareness to moving forward at how to reach your goal. So it's connecting the awareness to your goal. And that's where you begin to go from awareness to clarity. So building clarity over what steps are necessary to get you to your goal. It's connecting the two. And then finally allowing you to make the right choices in accordance with this newfound awareness and clarity. So making choices, putting it into action with your clear goal in sight. All right, I hope you found this helpful. I'll give it a moment in case any of you want to ask any final questions before I disappear tonight, or this morning, or this afternoon, wherever you might be. Okay. Right, well, thanks all for joining. Oh, thank you. I'm glad I've helped. Yeah, if you have any more questions, just drop me a message, drop me a DM, and I'll be sure to get back to you. I may be overthinking. I've certainly heard that before. Yeah, if you feel like you're overthinking, quieten your mind and take time for yourself. Meditate and do something that's pleasurable for yourself. Yeah, disconnecting is very important, definitely. Disconnecting is necessary, again, to tap into your intuition, what I was saying earlier. It's so important to disconnect. When we overthink, we get stuck in our heads. And that's not helpful. Getting stuck in our heads is not helpful because it disconnects us from what's going on inside of us. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining in today. And thank you for your input. Have a great evening, everyone. Wishing you all the best.